cool. All right, so let me do the presenting. Maybe that's better. One second, I'm going to start sharing one more time so that way we can go through this. Stop sharing. Okay, so if I share the full screen, then I will not be able to share other things to give you guys examples. So I'm going to just leave it as not full screen. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and. All right. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, cool. So this is basically, we're going to talk about today basics of mobile testing. And we have currently two different type of operating system when we talk about mobile testing. We will talk about what is the difference, the key difference among and the importance of the mobile and devices testing. We're going to talk about type of mobile apps. We're going to talk about different mobile OS, which is again for the iOS or Android. We have wireless mobile network, challenges in mobile app testing, process, methodology, and type of mobile testing infrastructure options, and best practices and conclusion, right? So this is going to be purely more about the standard, right? What you should follow, not that every company accomplishes that, that every company wants to be in that point. And they, in the perfect world, they would probably be at that point, reach out and be more, in this level. But based on experience, a lot of companies with mobile testing, there is a lot of challenges in it, especially with automation. And then we're going to talk about, I think you guys already did browser stack. If you guys did that, this will be pretty much more helpful, because some of the mobile testing, devices testing, we can actually do it in browser stack. And whenever they say mobile manual testing, they want to hear browser stack, they want to hear Source Lab. And these are the two tools they want to hear, because you can actually use those and not have a real device. But nothing beats the real device, and this is from experience, and I'll tell you why. So what is mobile testing? A mobile app is a software application developed specifically for use on a small wireless computer device, such as your phone. And also you can have pretty much iPad as well, right? So tablet, iPad, anything that is that can install that specifically, to your device. So mobile app is pretty much a client server app, because you download it and then basically then it works for you. You got your own personal copy, right? And what is the need on the first place for mobile? So just like any web application, and again, I'm not going to go by obviously this document I'm going to share, so you guys can also, use this for learning. But I'll also give you, aside from what's in here, I'll give you something more on the realistic side. Okay, so first of all, when you developed an app and you don't test, there could be a lot of issues that can slip through. And testing the app is essential as a web application, because it could be a loophole for customers to get unauthorized, information. So for example, Chase Bank has an iPhone app and Android app, and then they have a web application. So if they choose not to test on the iPhone and iOS, a customer could do something that is not permitted through the web. And now they're able to do something that maybe, they're able to withdraw money or send money that they don't have, or whatever is the case, right? So it's pretty much clear that you need as much as testing. It is as important as testing a web application. It's no question around that. And creating value to your customer, build a brand. So again, why do we even need an app is because the company, they want to expand, they want to be up to date, they want to make sure that the product and they want to give all the tools to their customers. So if you are a utility company, Con Edison, for example, and I can just log in from an app and pay my bill, and I can check my bill every day and it gives me notifications. I think Con Edison customers will be much, much, much happier because now they can see their daily usage. Now they can actually see their bills, and then they can also split bills. And this is just to add that kind of value to a company. So it is pretty much essential for a company nowadays, and they spend millions of dollars to make a mobile app. Why is it mobile important? I don't think I need to even tell you guys this, right? It's just because of the slide we're going through it. But again, I think you guys can tell me why is it important, right? It is essential nowadays. It is just essential. You don't have a mobile app, you're not visible to a lot of customers that is not using a web. Nobody wants to go into a web. For example, some customers, they want an app, right? They want to do a little bit more. But most importantly, when it comes about end-to-end feature, when it comes about complex feature, sometimes rather than using web, mobile is more easier. It's more user guided, and it is pretty much convenient for customers. So that's another aspect that we have to look into. We are talking about voice, we're talking about text, we're talking about notification that really puts the customer very closer to the company and the information the company wants to share. The other thing that we have to think about is that mobile devices, we have biometrics and we have facial recognition, right? Where we don't need to provide password to log in. So now at will, you can go to your chase.com or Chase app and log in at any time without providing password. This is so convenient that you probably log in yourself like 5 times a day, even though your checking account hasn't changed much, right? And you're just like, oh, okay, look, let me log in. Oh, let me see if my check went through. And that is the level of service the company wants to do, right? They want to be as close as possible with their customers. And in this year, mobile and mobile devices are more relevant, right? And every company is heading that direction. There are a few companies that I'm currently doing contracting with. They are pretty much creating app, iOS and Android, both app for their customers, even though they don't have to. I'm talking about companies that actually is necessity for the customers. A customer is pretty much, he has no choice but to use them, right? If you bought a house, there is no other competitor around that area. So why does even the company goes out and spend money on iOS and Android app? They just want to stay relevant if there is any sort of, even if there is no competition for that company to lose customer. And why is it important? Again, this is probably the same. We can pretty much see when it comes about the usage, a company does, what they do is that before they even decide, we want to go mobile, we want to use an app, they use something called Google Analytics, right? Or there are similar tools, but Google Analytics is one of the tools that they use to see where is the traffic coming from, where are the most user coming from. And now they're seeing 20, 30, 40% of their users are coming from a device, iOS or Android. And basically they're going into the web and logging in to the web, right? So even if you're using iOS and Android, you can still use the Safari browser. You can use the Chrome browser and go and log into a specific website. What happens is that every time you log in, the metadata from the browser gets sent to the Google Analytics, right? And that information goes to somebody like marketing team, somebody in the company have access to it. I do have access to some of the companies that I worked in. So now I can see like a pie chart to show me where are the traffic coming from. And so now I see significant portion of the traffic coming from the mobile devices. Then it will make sense for me to go ahead and create a mobile device. And the reason why we even talk about this, app and why is it important is because we want to go to the testing part. If it's creating an app is that important for a company's reputation and being up to date to the current technology, as well as being closer to their customer, it is very, very, very important for them to thoroughly test the application, thoroughly test all of the features and functionality before releasing. And one of the companies that I'm currently working with, it's been a year and 2 months we haven't released to the outside world, right? Both applications still going simultaneously, 2 different team, larger team, I'm talking about millions of dollars spent, and we still didn't determine to go out there and say, okay, let's have the customer use it. I've been using it, I don't see any issues, but we're still going through more and more and more testing before we can even feel comfortable to go out there. So we don't try to rush. When we say why is it, why is the quality critical, this is where you come in, and you have to convince me, because you are the QA. Your only job is the quality control and quality assurance, as well as the testing, right? So you are the person, right, who's going to do that quality control. And for you to basically go out there and do this kind of job, you have to know what, why quality is essential, absolutely essential for a specific company. The reason why we do testing is because we want to maintain the quality to a very specific standard for a company or the competition, right? So imagine you have both. You have Bank of America and you have Chase. You log into both app because you have both account and you maintain both accounts. Somehow Chase is significantly making your life easier and is seamless, and it feels like Chase is doing so much better in terms of their app, and it doesn't ask you to log in every single time. It is able to use your fingerprint or your face to log in, and it is providing many ways to service you. For example, accepting a check, and transferring, Zelle, right? So many other services that you can use. On the other side, you see that Bank of America, they're limiting you. They're saying, okay, if you want to deposit this check, go to a bank. If you want to do this, go to, and soon enough, you're going to say, okay, you know what? Let me move my saving account from Bank of America to Chase, right? And now think like this is going to happen with millions of customers that are out there, right? At least some people will make even if it's 10% of the people, if they change their mind, then the app is worth it, right? The amount of money they spend is nearly not the amount of money they would have to spend to hire customer service, where you would have to go to the bank and do all these things, where they can just simply give you an app and you do it. You know how much money the company is saving? That's really, 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 efficient for a company. So it is absolutely essential for a customer, for competition, in the matter of competition. The second one is the first impact. The consumer should have a good experience, and that's what we just talked about. And if there were flaws, if basically if you have any sort of error, an issue in the application, you hit transfer money and all of a sudden the application went blank and it says, we'll call you or contact this number. For the moment, let's say you're just transferring 50 grand to your real estate, maybe lawyer, right? Something happened, you putting a down payment, and all of a sudden it says, pending, and then it just blank screen and says you have zero in your account. You're going to panic for the moment. You're going to start calling customer service. That customer service costs money. Now think about, your experience, the trauma that you went through of losing that much money at the same time. I don't know if you guys ever logged in middle of the night and seeing that your account has zero amount and it says maintenance on the top, right? If you do, I mean, if you see that, that means, they're doing a scheduled maintenance, meaning they're just releasing code. But if that happens during the daytime, there will be a lot of customers that are panicking, even if it does say maintenance. They're gonna say, oh, I lost all my money. I had $1 million or whatever. And that's not a good customer experience. The other one is poor quality application, right? You click on tap and then it's asking for confirmation with another window. And now the window is scrollable. You have to scroll down on that small window and then click OK. And then it will deposit your check. That is not a good customer experience. That took 3 clicks and some frustration. I have to open up another pop-up within the app and then go down and then click OK to say, okay, I agree, and then deposit. Why don't I agree to these terms in the very beginning after downloading the app, so I never have to deal with this, right? So this could be another example of poor quality, poor choices, and very much user experience with poor user experience, right? So anytime you work in a mobile team and you see a design and you match with the design, right? And you would then also see how you feel about that feature, right? How you as a customer, as a first customer of that app, feel about this feature. Do you feel you're frustrated? Do you feel this is going to be very much, bringing more, bad experience for the customer? Then you suggest, then you go out and say, no, I don't think I can pass this. This is not going to be nearly as good of an experience as web. In the web, we don't do this, or in web, they don't even have to go through this specific flow. I don't think I can approve this, and then you would then go and set up more meetings with other like UX designer, your product team, and tell them this is how I feel. If you guys want to go ahead and release this, totally fine, but I don't think I can, right? So 1 second, let me see if it makes it bigger screen. Okay, it does make it like a huge screen. 1 second. All right. Let me go back to the original state. Okay, that's fine. I went back to original state because I'm using a very wide screen, like 49-inch. So it will probably not going to look good on your side with the recording. All right, so I'll leave it like this, guys. Let's go into the, okay, quality critical. Okay, that's fine. We went through that. We have the agenda, and I think we talked about the agenda already, right? Types of testing. So there are 3 types of mobile app. Who can tell me some of those? Here are some listed. There is one is native app, and there is one is web app, and there is another one is called hybrid app, right? So let's get some input from you guys to make sure that we get some communication here, right? So let's bring some of you guys here. I'm going to start asking question. And the other thing is that I'm noticing somebody's logging in with 1, 2, 3, 4. I think you should put your name in here so I can address you. But if you continue to put 1, 2, 3, 4, we're gonna have to probably, think about giving you a name, because I don't know how to address you at this point, right? So, all right. So let's go to, okay, Fatima, right? So tell me, what do you understand about native app? There's three kind of apps on your phone: native, web app, and hybrid.
So I think from the name of it, it sounds like those are specific for only phones, maybe. Like it comes from like I can download it from like iTunes, something like that.
Yes, partially, but it's not fair for me to ask you this question because it is probably pretty new to you guys, all of you guys. So native app is when you download an app and it is in the Apple Store, Apple App Store or Google Play, and it goes into on your phone, right? But it doesn't open. Like if you click on something, for example, your Chase Bank app, right? You click on it, it doesn't go and open up another website for you. It doesn't like get out of the app. It stays within the app, right? It doesn't go to a URL. You don't see a URL bar on the top, right? But it has its features and everything is native. It is responsive. How many people know what responsive means? Responsive experience. That is also, responsiveness is also applies to web application. Okay, so not only just iOS and Android or any, device. So responsive means when you have an app kind of changes its structure to fit and well suited into the device. So if you have an iPhone, let's say 11 Pro Max, right? And it basically looks as good as iPhone SE, which is a smaller device, right? So depending on where you download, it pretty much makes it bigger or smaller without giving you any sort of side effects, right? So it changes the structure, changes where things should be. So if the screen doesn't have enough space, somehow it allows you to scroll. If the screen doesn't have enough space on the left, somehow it opens up another tab, right? So these are responsiveness based on the screen size. For example, you have a paragraph on your app, and now you open the app on iPhone 11 and iPhone smaller, the SE one. That same paragraph is not going to look the same because it will wrap, the word wrap. The word wrapping will be happening relative to the screen size. Now, the screen size of iPhone 11 and SE is different, right? So it knows exactly which iPhone it downloaded in. And based on that, it will do the word wrapping so it doesn't overlap and it doesn't have a empty void space in between, right? So that responsiveness, this is just one example of a responsiveness. It could be a button. There is 3 buttons on your screen and they all don't fit into a smaller device, but it does fit into the bigger device, right? So it will show up in line. For example, offer, fast, and most, these are buttons to you at this point, for example. So they're aligning just like this. But as soon as you have a smaller device, somehow it changes the structure. Most comes in the bottom, in the middle, and it looks as good as before. It's just not, cutting half of this most. So that is called responsive experience. And so native app is something that you download from App Store, you download from Google Play, but it doesn't rely on a website. Okay, it doesn't go and open a website when you click and go through the whole application and do some things. You want to create something, you want to create order for Amazon, for example, you want to create an order. It doesn't go and open up actual Amazon website and tells you to do something that is not native. Native means it's basically within the device. It doesn't go outside of it. It will do all of the flow through the app rather than a web app. What is a web app? The next one you guys have. Let me just go through real quick all 3, and then I'll give you comparison between all 3. So that way it's going to be more and more clear for you guys, right? So now, what is a web app then, right? Web app is basically make it like you're taking a website and make it look like a mobile version, mobile app, but it's not an app. You cannot download it. You go into the website and all of a sudden it does look like mobile app, right? But it does take a URL. You can change URL and things like that. That is a web application which can run on mobile. So any application that people say, is this application is responsive? If this website responsive, and if it says yes, then it is a it is going to run good in mobile. So let's look at some mobile responsive app as an example before we move on to the next one, right? So as we know that mobile responsive app doesn't have to be downloaded. You can just visit, right? So let's see. I don't know, maybe Chase, maybe not Chase. 1 second. I don't want to go into something that more finance and stuff, right? So something, let's say Amazon, right? Amazon it's got to be responsive, right? It got to be responsive. So let's see how we can respond. And if you want to do responsive testing, I'm going to teach you right now. So let's move this in the bottom. When you want to do responsive testing, there is a simulator you can use, and the simulator is right here. Okay, this will change to different devices. So I click on it, it became a responsive mode. So at this point, notice how it changed the structure compared to what it used to be. Okay, notice how it's changing quickly because we changed the screen size. Okay, now let's go into iPhone SE, which is the smallest one that I was talking about. Notice how for iPhone SE, it changes its structure. It doesn't cut anything off. As you can see on the left side, right side, it just fits everything in nicely. If we do a bigger device, maybe let's see iPod Air, and it is pretty much same. So when they say, have you ever done responsive testing? What is your answer?
Yes.
100% yes, right?
Yes.
You basically, so how did you test it? Well, I used the simulator from Chrome to change to different devices. So for example, I can do iPhone 12 and then go ahead and test it this way. So let me open up another website. Maybe I'm gonna show you the difference between responsiveness and not responsiveness. This is called right there. Okay, I'm gonna accept all the cookies, it's fine. So notice that when I'm doing iPhone 12 Pro, there is a hamburger sign in the bottom, in the top right here. This is called hamburger, okay? The hamburger button. So now this hamburger button will go away as soon as I'm not responsive. Where did it go? Look at that. Where did it go? Nowhere to be found. But as soon as you go to device mode, it automatically brings it back because it knows that, let me just select something real quick. It knows that it doesn't have enough space to show all the menu items on the navigation bars, right? So now we have the hamburger button, we click on it, and now we can see all of it, right? We can actually use them. So this is called responsiveness, right? And we did responsive testing by changing this different device, or you can use a real device. Sometimes the company chooses to use the real device. Sometimes the company chooses browser stack. Browser stack is more commercial kind of, and I'm going to sign in real quick with a free account. Let's see if I still have access. But in browser stack, you can have any device you like, right? You can basically, they allow you to have different devices. So now, what do you want? Do you want Android, Windows, iOS? So I'm going to do iOS for now. And here you have to say, I want to do app live testing versus live. It's two different things. So I'm going to do app live. And now I will, you see, it's just showing you what you do, right? This is for actual app. But we can open up Safari and then we will be able to go to that mobile application. This is how it basically gives you logs and everything. This is actual simulation of the browser stack, right? So have you ever used browser stack? Is it complicated? I don't think so, right? You can comfortably say yes, and you basically simulated a real device. That's about it. Everything that you tested on your phone is the same thing. It's just that there's one extra step. The first step is to open up App Live and then choose what kind of device that you want to simulate. That's it. That's about it. There is a limitation to browser stack, and I'll tell you guys about that. So this is called responsive testing. This is mobile web app rather than native app. Native app is downloadable, right? You download it. Can we download this? No, this is just a URL. So that's the difference between two different kind, native and web app. Now you guys can tell me what is in a hybrid. I'm going to go into the next one. let's see. Let me ask Fariha, what does hybrid means to you in this case? Hybrid app.
I am not sure.
Okay.
It could be any website based.
When we say hybrid, when people say hybrid car, like, hybrid vehicle, right? That is combination of two items. So this is going to be the same, analogy here, which is hybrid means combination of native and web app, meaning you downloaded the app, but when you clicked on order now, it automatically took you to Safari browser. And then it's asking you to follow the process in the browser rather than the app.
So
That
Amazon could be
is-
example for that.
Amazon could be, but Amazon, their app, like, obviously I can give you an example, but Amazon app allows you to do everything in the app, right? So that is native. But there are apps where it has links and you click on it, it takes you to a browser, so a hybrid app is basically you installed it on your phone. For example, Amazon, you installed it, but then on the bottom from Amazon, on that app, it says you want to see, let's say, your order list, the items that you have ordered, and you clicked on that and it took you to a website, and it opened up a website and it's asking you to sign in to that website separately. That is hybrid, because now a native app is asking you to go to a web app. All right. So that is kind of an example of the hybrid. Make any sense? So basically any website that you see it has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on the front end, right? So that is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Even though it looks like an app, still we're looking at the HTML right here. We got the CSS right there, and we still have JavaScript. As you can see, JavaScript right there, which is, we can see that they're being executed right here. So let's reiterate. I want to see the level of understanding of these three type of app, because this is an interview question. If they ask you, have you ever done mobile testing in an interview, and you say, no, I haven't, that's like, there is no reason for you to, there's no reason for you to say no. By the way, so I don't know if 1, 2, 3, 4, whoever you are, can you change your name real quick?
Quick question. When I Google this, like the hybrid app, there is the example make me real confused, like Instagram, Discord, because I use Discord. Discord never goes to the web. So how it's a hybrid app? And then they said Twitter is also a hybrid app.
Right. Twitter is hybrid app is because, look, any app that you downloaded and there's something that you want to click on, there's something that you want to use, but it just opens up another browser within your phone, that is hybrid, because it cannot fulfill your needs, and it has elsewhere, it has a website that it wants you to go and do the process there. So I'm going to assume 1, 2, 3, 4 actually is not listening. I'm going to kick you out from the class, because this is the second time I said. And then you can rejoin if I am mistaken, then you can rejoin and put the right name, please. Thank you. Okay, good. Yeah, this just it's just weird, because I have to address people with their names, so that way at least it is more interactable. I didn't mean to interrupt the class for this, but anyway, with that said, native app, again, web app and native app and hybrid app is an interview question, because if you say, if they ask you, have you ever done, web mobile testing, and you're going to say, yes, I did. Okay, what did you do? Well, I tested in the real device, or I used browser stack and simulated those devices and tested on those devices. Okay. What kind of app did you test it? That's when this question question comes in. You're going to say, well, I did both, native and hybrid and web app as well for responsive testing, right? So this comes handy. And then they will not ask you what does rich native means. This is for you to learn, because when it comes about explaining to an interviewer, you're going to be much more comfortable if you know what they are. And you should probably know what they are, because this is an everyday, item on your phone. When you download an app, when you use it, that is native. If you, within their application, if you click on something and it opens up a browser and it has an URL, then it is a hybrid. But then if you never downloaded anything, but it looks like an app, but there is an URL, that is a web app. Okay, so that's the 3 different type of application that we do testing. So let's talk about reality now. Now let's say you are working on iOS or Android, right? And your developer has, tell you to go and do the testing. What about the environment, QA environment, staging, development environment? How do you know where, and how do you know what to, how to install the app? Do you go to the app store? What do you do? So if this app never published, and I'm getting to somewhere, right? An app has never been published to App Store. Your company doesn't even have an app to App Store yet. How do you do the testing? There is more than one way. And we're going to talk about those, but I want to talk about one possibility, which is there is, what they say, there is an app for it. So for this, there is an app for it too. So different environment. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it up because I don't have a app that I created to show you guys an example. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys the, I'm going to bring you guys the application. This is the, okay, this is the app, right? TestFlight. TestFlight makes it easy to test beta version of macOS app that provides valuable feedback to developers before they release in their app. So for iOS side, and this is one of the method, there is another one just like this. I'm going to talk about this for a second before we go into that app. So if the app was never released, your developer is going to ask you to first download TestFlight. This app you can download in your iOS app. Once you download this, your developer will give you a code. He will basically make you a beta version user, right? You're the beta tester. He's going to make you a beta tester. So don't get confused. You're still a QA, but he's going to make you a beta version tester into this app. After that, once you sign up, once you register, you need, for iOS people, you need a account. So you can actually create a new iTunes account with your company email. If you don't want to mix up, if you don't want to like use your personal one, you can always create using company email. I would prefer it that way so you don't mix up anything. And then what you need to do, okay, and then, okay, I think I did kick out somebody that, okay, I'm just gonna ask him to rejoin. Okay, so now this app has a lot of features that comes with, and let's see if we can kind of view the features of this app, right? If we can, since we have the, okay, iPhone, let's see what's for iPhone. So what it does is that it gives you, developer will give you a code and you click on redeem. And as soon as you enter that code, it's like numbers and digits, right? It's like 8-digit numbers, or I don't know if it's the exact 8-digit, but it's something like that, right? You get that code in your email, in your work email, and you enter and you click on redeem, it will automatically install the app, right? This app is never published to any like iOS app store yet. So you can download it personally for yourself, right? Once that is done, every time developer pushes his code and updates, this status changes. For now, this is open because this is the most recent version, right? So if there's a new version, it will say update. So you will be able to always update to the newer version. And then you have, you basically click on the app. If you click on the app next, you're going to able to change different version. This is the example right here. You can now change between different versions. So for example, 8.6.0, which is 243, right? And for some reasons, you have 243 and you're seeing a bug. And you want to know if that bug existed prior to this new release. You downgrade, you basically click on install, and now you're on 242, and it is instant. It is basically instant. Once you move to this version, you realize that, okay, wait a minute, after the 243, the issue appeared, right? Then you can let them know, hey, you need to fix this because this is a current issue. This is happening after your release, right? So at will, at any time, you can change to different versions of the app that is being developed actively in your team. So now for manual testing, I would prefer a real device, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll tell you why we want to use BrowserStack as another option, but why a real device is necessary in the very first stage of the app development, at least for iOS.
Quick question. In the parentheses, the numbers 240, 241, it means it has been sent back to check the error, right? That many times?
No, this is like the numbers of release, right? You see the number incremented by, these are the version number, and this is the numbers of build, basically. So each time it says, okay, I have a new build, it has a number, it increments by 1. Okay. And then, so this is the number of release, and this is actually, so it released to the Q environment this many times. And then we have the version of the actual app on the left side right here. So the version can be controlled, meaning they can choose to start from 0 if they want to, whatever version, right? They can start from 2. However, the developers likes it, they probably going to start from 0, and then he's going to start from build number 1, build number 2, build number 3. So every time they push a new build to the environment, Q environment, it will be a new, new number. So you want to be very, very precise when it comes about testing. If you see open, that means your your app is up to date. If you see update, that means you have an older version of app. You want to install the new version before you do the testing. So you have to kind of, keep your eyes onto the test flight app. So as soon as you open the test flight, you're going to see this screen first. Okay. And then you want to see which app do you want to use. You want to click to open, but these apps will also be available from your iPhone. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to this test flight first, because once it's installed, you can totally not even look into this. But you have to come in here for a few reasons. One, you want to check the version. If you found a bug, you want to say, I found a bug in 8.6.0, and build number is 243. And then they will say, oh, what about 242? Does this bug still there? Okay, let me find out 1 second. And quickly you do your testing and say, nope, it's not in the 242 build, right? So that purpose is, once you install this app and then you have the app that you're testing, you can skip test flight unless you need to update, unless you need to go back to a specific version of the app. Okay. You can also start filing bugs directly from this app, but they don't accept that. You have to file through Jira that we showed you earlier. Okay. So next is, let's go into the type of testing. So for hybrid app, there are types of testing, and obviously there will be, let me go into the agenda. We already talked about the hybrid one. So the different mobile OS stores, and let's go into that operating system. So there's Android. I'm just going to talk about today Android and iOS, because Windows, how many people here has Windows? Anybody? Raise your hand.
Yes, I have.
Oh, no way. Okay, so only one person has Windows, so we'll have to.
I have those.
Me too.
No way. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I didn't realize, but Android is good. I mean, Windows was good at some point, right? But
It's
anyways,
okay. The Mac people can go first. It's fine.
The reason why I'm saying like skipping Windows is because I worked with numbers of companies for mobile testing, and nobody even talked about Windows app. And it's been like last 3, 4, 5 years, I would say. I didn't hear any company saying, hey, we forgot to test the Windows app. Everybody talk about Android and iOS. So anyway, so we'll talk about this, but anything that we're talking about for the iOS and Android will apply to Windows, because that is also a device specific app, right? That is a hardware specific app. So let's talk about that. As you can see the percentage here, we got the Android is probably the largest, and then we have the next largest is the iOS, and then we have Windows, which is 2.8, and we luckily have 3 people here with Windows. That's great. And then BlackBerry, I don't think
Hold
anybody
on a
has
second. Are we talking about phone, or are we talking about a machine?
phone.
Oh, I was
phone.
confused too.
Ah,
No, I have
Because
iPhone.
I'm shocked if you guys have Windows.
My God, me too.
Mhm.
it's Apple. Of
That's
course.
yeah,
We-
that's crazy.
All of us were thinking about our machines. That's why.
No, Windows machine is still as good as Apple, even probably better for gaming.
Thank God.
Yeah, I personally want to buy a gaming machine, but when it comes about iOS, I use iOS, the Apple device I use for like more like design, right? Using Photoshops and things like this, more efficient. But anyway, so let's go into the mobile testing
It's
again.
iOS. I think most of us have iOS.
Okay, good. So let's talk about that. And I think when you guys got there, like a recruiter calls you and says, hey, we need somebody as a mobile tester. We need a mobile tester. And you say, no, I only did web application testing. Sorry. We don't want to turn that opportunity down, right? And that is the main thing, is because the difference between mobile and the web application testing into your STLC. Tell me something. What is the difference that you think in this STLC could be? So I luckily I have this here. So do you forget about your engineering process and follow something that is more mobile specific, or do you follow the same? What do you think? So this STLC process is something that we say we hold it to our, expert, like as an expert tester, this is the process that we follow. We don't follow our heart. We don't follow our feelings for the day. I'm like, oh, today I feel like I'm only going to write test case and then execute. Tomorrow I feel like I want to write test scenario and then execute. We don't go like that. Otherwise, the company is dependent on your feelings. They have constantly make sure that you're happy. So we can follow the engineering process to be more precise and consistent with the process. So now we have this, 1 to 9 step to say, when do we say we're done, right? And do we skip any one of these? This is true for web. Is this also true for mobile testing? That's my question to you guys.
I think so.
Yeah, same thing. The only difference here is that when you do web application testing, you go to a website and you find your QA, whatever, QA dot, whatever website web URL is for QA, and you do the testing there for web application. And I'm talking about manual. When you test in those devices, the company sends you devices at home. So initially they will probably, if you are the only QA, or if you are the you are manual, if you're the manual tester, you're gonna have at least 6 or 7 device at your house. They will send it to you. iPad, you'll get probably iPhone and all of that, right? And if it rings, all of them will ring at the same time, because you probably will set up, your instant messaging and everything all across the phone. I wouldn't recommend, but if you do that, and somebody says, hey, and all of them is going to be like, he's going to play music. But anyway, so that's something that happened to me. But you will get all of this device to do the testing. And let's talk about the difference between, and again, we don't skip this. This is the same thing. So now you are on a table right now taking an interview for a mobile position, a mobile tester position. And I ask you a question like, so tell me, what would you do to finish testing? Like, what are the steps that you follow? Who wants to answer this? I'm going to ask Rifat. Even for mobile, what would be your answer? Is it any different?
The question again, please.
So you're in an interview and I'm the manager, and I'm saying, hey, so can you tell me, when you do a test of a user story, what are the steps do you follow? What do you actually check, for testing?
Isn't it kind of be the same as the thing we did with the website? Like, test all the scenarios, make sure everything is covered, know our scope, make test cases, execute them, report bug. Then if the bug came back, then report it again. If it's fixed, then you say, yeah, it's good to go. Then it's ready for release, and it's released.
That's it. So that is exactly the same exact process. But in an interview, I would explain each step one other way. I guess everybody here get used to explaining the keyword. Sometime in an interview, let's say you have nothing else to say, but you said something like, for example, communication, right? Oh, tell me, how can you be more efficient in your work, right? And then you have nothing else to say except for the word communication. You can literally spend 5 minutes just talk about communication, how it worked out for you in the previous teams, how you resolved critical matters using communication only. And this is one, instead of saying this is the only thing that I know, this is one of the important element. This is one of the most, important item that I would consider for resolving any issues that I may face. And in the past, in so and so this team, I was having this and that issue. And then what I did is I started increasing communication. I started talking to offshore. I started talking to my BA and the PO. And I quickly realized I was already caught up with all of my tasks, and I was on time. Everybody appreciated my work. And so I would say, yeah, definitely one of the top skills that a person need in this is that in this career is that at least communication. So explaining all of these, right? Like requirement study, what will you do, if you studied requirement, you don't understand the requirements, then test planning, what are the things that you will include? What is even test strategy? Scenarios, what do you even cover? What are the how will you even think about the scenario? You're going to say, I'm going to think like an end user. I'm going to think like the user and come up with all possible combination scenarios. I'll also think like a developer. I'll think also like a QA. So that way I know that I have 100% coverage, right? And then I'll start writing my test cases. I will write it in a way that anybody can execute without having to go back to any of these documents. So it is, trust me, in an interview sometime, like there are sometimes, some of you guys actually surprised me, because there is one interview last month somebody took, and he he pretty much aced it. So I was pretty much listening in, and everything the guy's saying, he's basically just explaining just the keywords, right? Just explaining like, okay, this is what, that he did, and this is some of the issues that he was able to resolve. And it's just really that the manager really liked his answers. But sometime in an interview, you'll see like you answered and you finished with your answer, and somehow you have nothing else to say, and they're just waiting on you, right? And you just said something, and you just 2 seconds later you're done, and they're just waiting on you, like thinking you're going to say something else. Just start explaining some of the words that you just mentioned, and it will still make sense. So we're going to talk about those tactics and in the interview prep, and probably sometime tomorrow I'll reach out to those who already has the resume. Rifat, I owe you a resume. I'll send you probably after this call, but we're gonna probably have 5 people going in first, and then we'll do next 5 and next 5 and next 5. So everybody's gonna get their chance. It's just that some people are volunteering to go early, which is fine by me. I don't want to do all of you guys at the same time. All right. So let's go into the next one. This is just to show that the user base, where the traffic come from, and obviously 2 operating system that we will do most of our testing. So anybody calls you for mobile testing, they're not asking about Windows. They're most likely will ask you about the Android and the iOS. So these are, again, we just going to talk about these 2. Now, if you are really comfortable with iOS, it is fair to say that, hey, my company had 2 teams, and I was specifically responsible for iOS side. So I will not be able to talk more about the Android testing, period, right? So you can also give them an equal, or at least a fair expectation, because if you really don't have a Android device and you're not familiar with, and they will ask you a question like, how do you install the app and things like that. Aside from TestFlight, there is another way to install an app, and you get the code itself, and you can actually install it locally to do more testing. So we can talk about that also. The next one is network. So the network is basically sometime, and this is like this is more like readiness testing. This is like go live checklist, right? They don't do that on the day one. When the app is basically, nearly ready, there is a agenda for going live. There is a list of checklists that we go through. One would be like, let's do a load test. Let's see how the application performs under different network, and how do you even simulate that, right? On the iOS is kind of a bit easier because there is an app for it, but on the Android, I think there is another app, but I gotta actually look it up because I haven't done much on the Android side. But there must be an app for it to slow down your network. You can also, like, there is one testing that I was doing, which is very recent, and they said that if the application loads slowly, it should show a spinner. I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So I click on view all my accounts, for example. All the accounts is not going to load at the same time. So it takes maybe 10 seconds. In the meantime, what do we show to the user? Right? It should be like a spinner or something, right? Now, how do I even test that? Because the application is super fast. That never happens. If somebody's on a mountain and they have like a poor network, only then they would see this kind of things. So then we actually put our phone into that kind of condition. There is an app that you can use, Network Link Conditioner. And then the other clever ways you can do is that if you have your, if you connect to your Wi-Fi and go a little bit farther away as much as you can until you find the perfect condition, or so your Wi-Fi router is probably in the 2nd floor, and you just go to the basement and find a specific room that has that kind of slowness, that you can see the spinner and say, okay, I've seen it, here's a screenshot, and it passes, right? That will be one quick way. But the other way would be actually slowing down the network to a specific, condition. And then you want to see that in the slow environment, can you perform all your tasks? Because let's say you have 2G and you're not able to perform, all of the tasks, then you don't want to give the customer a false sense of, confirmation here that, okay, yeah, you can go ahead and pay your bills, for example. So in that case, the app should tell them like, hey, your network is very, very slow. You have a poor network. This feature of paying bills is not available at this moment because of that, right? Like, obviously there will be better wording. I'm just saying, just for us to hear from here. But these are some things that you will be doing the testing. It's going to be very much toward the end. In the beginning, they wouldn't care too much about this little experiences. They want to push enough code. They want to see the application working. They want to have some working prototypes in this case. So this simulation of different network and different you want to see the performance of the application basically under different condition. So now the question is, what kind of testing were you doing in a iOS or Android device? Your answer is gonna be one of the kind of testing that is, you did the compatibility, network compatibility, for example. You want to see device compatibility, right? So if the app is working well with different iPhones, sure, it's iOS app, but there's different kind of iPhones. Are they working well on across all of the iPhones? That's device, compatibility. And then we have the network that you want to check. That's another one, aside from the functionality. Functionality is going to be same as how you do the testing for any application, right? It could be web or iOS, but there are some extra testing that you do because these are mobile devices, right? So network is one of them that you do. Okay. The next slide is, we're talking about different kind of, and again, this is the type of, sometimes you'll see like they want to simulate 3G, they want to simulate 2G because their users still, some of the area in the whole country, some of the small group of users still have 2G, for example. A small group of user has 3G. I think they just shut down 3G. I don't know. But anyway, so for those users, they want to do the testing. If the company, or if it really depends on the priority, right? And this is something that will not be the first thing in the checklist when it comes about the application development. It's not going to be the first thing on the checklist. And you want to do that as part of the readiness for go live. And this is going to be something that is different other than web application. In web application, we do functionality, usability, and we also check if the application, the workflow of the application and the responsiveness of the application in web. We do the same exact things here. The thing is, there are certain items like wireless network, device compatibility, network, and these are a few things that are different. Okay. All right, some of the challenges on the mobile app testing. So when you talk about Android, and I give you guys an example, there might be, if not, there might be a lot of devices uses Android system. So which device specifically do you want to test, right? So in a development team, they choose 4 or 5 devices. They don't choose like 10 because, they can do Google One, and there are other Android devices, right? They don't want to do all of them because otherwise they're going to need a lot of people doing testing. So what they do is that they choose the highly used devices, right? And then they say, okay, we're going to only support these devices, and we hope that it will also work on other devices. If they do, that's great. If they don't, then it's okay, right? Because we don't want to go into that kind of, we don't want to support those devices because the user traffic is so low from those devices. It's okay, right? there are policies, government policies, there are network issues. It could be slowness. It could be because we cannot predict where the customer will be. They could be hiking and something happened on their phone. They clicked on it. They want to go and do something. Maybe they want to sell their stock because, you know, share market is crashing. They're on the middle of the mountain, and all of a sudden a friend called them, like, sell everything. And he's trying to sell it, but he says, I can't because the network is very slow, right? Or it says, okay, I sold it. Next day, he goes and logs in and he wasn't able to sell it, but the application say, yes, we took care of it. And next day he sees that his shares are still there and it wasn't sold, and the market actually plummeted to all the way. And now he lost maybe, like, let's say 15, 20, 30, or maybe even more money because he couldn't sell it on time. But the app gave him false sense of humor, sorry, false sense of confirmation in this case, right? And he has that, confirmation from the app that it was sold. Can he get his money back? Yes, he can. He can go and sue the company. Now the company is losing money. So that is also the other thing that we have to think about. The other one is OS version. So every time you see 2 months later, a version is updated, iOS or Android, the version is getting updated. And the challenges here is that developers are writing their code onto, let's say 14, iOS version 14. They're writing their code, they're happy, everything is going fine. All of a sudden there's iOS version 15 and there is now new features came in along that version. Now everything that they worked in, they need to redo some of the items because it doesn't comply with the newer version, right? And this actually happened. You guys remember the iOS when they introduced scanning from your you can do a scan from your camera, and also anywhere you have an input box you can do scanning. How many people know this? You can actually scan text. So what happened is that we thought we did something wrong, right? We were testing the application. Now we go and click on the input box and we want to search for something. And now it keep bringing up the scanning, scanning is part of the, I think, the accessibility, part of the iOS. And you can actually shut it off if you want to, if you don't like the feature. But we thought, oh no, we did something, developers did something. I actually filed a bug. The product team was pretty mad about this. There's, oh, why is this happening? We can't even type anything anymore. We're not able to paste anything. It doesn't show the paste option and all of that. We have a meeting, we sit down, and guess who was furious? There was like hot, air was coming from the ear of this one person. So he was the iOS developer, right? And he thought that we would automatically understood, and even the pretty much product team and business, everybody like jumped in, like, oh, why is this happening? And we're like, kind of like, we surrounded him with these questions, and he's like, guys, calm down. This is a feature. This is a feature. And I kind of like knew there's got to be a feature, but I don't want to, since product team and since the business, everybody's jumped in. I said, okay, this must be issue. And not everybody actually moved from 14 to 15. I believe it was on 15th. I was 15th. And only few people had that issue. I had that issue because I updated. And there are other people updated that had some issue. And rest of us didn't have that issue. And they were like, no, this is definitely an issue. But anyway, so he was then at the end, obviously the meeting ended up with a good note. The developer was laughing the whole time. And we were able to discover how to turn it off, but still it's annoying for a lot of customer, the iOS feature, because when you try to copy and paste, try to do that if you have iOS device and you have that scanning feature on your phone. Sometimes it just gets on your way and it's just kind of annoying. So that's another challenge when you have a mobile development. Your team will constantly face with this kind of update, and there always going to be something new that the development team has to comply with. We got the keypad, which is, it could be small, it sometimes could be limited. It doesn't have all of the options like a keyboard. Then we have screen size. Screen size is another one, right? Design team always have constant struggle. They choose the largest device for their design document, and they do, they make the mockups, looks good on paper. And when the developer wants to implement that, it doesn't look nothing like device. And I'm like, oh, why does it look like this? Oh, because the device is small. Get a bigger device, then you will see it's going to be much better. So the screen size matters a lot, and you will have to provide your input. If it looks horrible because of the screen size, you have to provide your input to make sure that developers, they can do something about that, right? Sometimes they will provide less information. Maybe they will end up with putting ... instead of putting all of the entire text because it doesn't fit into a smaller device. But that also is a challenge for testers and designer and the developers when it comes about the iOS or Android or any mobile devices, mobile app. The screen factor, it's pretty much the same. We got the device resolution. We're talking about sometimes the color, sometimes the look and feel can be different based on the resolution itself. It might be, the pixel might be a bit more dense versus another device may have less dense, and it will look different to your eyes. And you may end up thinking it's a bug, but it is, depending on the device. And the last thing is app development platform, meaning every developers that they use an SDK, right? And basically this SDK is allowing them to create the app under a specific platform using a specific language. For OS, they use Swift. For Android, they can use Java and other languages that are out there. C# can be used also for iOS. So just keep that in mind. These are some challenges that you actually go through when it comes about developing an app, not only just testing. So now we're coming to more specifically on the testing. Device diversity is basically you and your team has to decide which device you want to choose for testing. You and your team has to decide whether you want to upgrade to the new OS or not, right? Because you can't constantly just change and try to comply with the new device or new version of that device. So the team at some point will say, okay, well, let's just go through this specific version, this specific device. Nobody updates until we're ready. And then we update, and then we see what are the issues that we have to fix, right? So the entire team actually will make that kind of determination whether they want to update and move forward, whether they want to not update also. So I was told in the beginning not to update, and then we were told to update, and we updated, and we started seeing very few issues that was fixed almost immediately. Network connectivity options, that's another one. Sometimes you'll see devices doesn't allow you to do certain things when you're not in Wi-Fi versus 3G versus LTE, right? Or 5G. So then these are different, could be the, different options that you want to use in terms of testing. And simulation can be done in terms of slow network. And we already talked about this in the earlier slide. You may want to do one round of testing with a very slow network, just to make sure that this one guy in the mountain climbing doesn't have that bad experience. But that's not going to be one guy. It could be a lot of guys, because it's a mobile device and it could be anywhere. And then we got the unique environment conditions, right? And which is that, let's say when we are doing testing in QA, do we want the exact snapshot of the production data? We want the database to be same as a specific, environment. So for example, developers, they could have an environment where they create the data for themselves to do the testing. QA, we will take a snapshot from the database, right? Meaning we will take a sample, a smaller sample from the database, and we use that. And then finally, we have staging, where it will take the entire database from production, make a copy, and then it will use that for the staging. Staging is the most production-like environment, right? Meaning it is as close as possible to production. It doesn't have the real user, but it has the real people, right? It has the real customers and all of that. So you may not have access to staging sometimes if you join as a contractor, because you may be able to find customers' information and call them and say, hey, give me $500. I'm just kidding. But you can actually, have the customer's data, which you are supposed to have it. You're not supposed to look into those data. You can actually see who has how much money in their check-in or whatever, but you're not supposed to have those. So they will mock those. They will basically censor those information. You'll see that when you log in, depending on who you are, if you logged in and you're not supposed to, you're going to see that anywhere that has sensitive information like numbers, social security number, ID number, you're going to see like just the star, which is abstract, right? It will mock it. The developers will have the mechanism to do that for the data security. So just keep that in mind. When you see everywhere, you logged into staging, for example, and you see everywhere those, abstract, and you going crazy, wow, this is bugs everywhere, this and that, right? It's not a bug, it's just that your permission, you're not allowed to see those information. Okay, and then we got the frequent changes in OS, which is the biggest change, biggest problem for both the developer and the tester. Okay, so just keep that in mind. These are a few challenges that you can actually talk about during the interview. Process and methodology, it doesn't really changes a lot when it comes about the process of testing. But here are a few ways, few best practices to provide it, right? And we still going to follow the SDLC, but when we say, let me just start from here, right? So this is best practice 1, and then let's go from here, right? Signed off. Okay, it's so small. Let me make it bigger if I can. Okay, so let's look at the first one, right? So signed off test requirement. So signed off test requirement means that you're saying I'm done, everything is good to go, right? So in order to say, okay, I'm done, everything good to go, you have to follow this series of steps. And then once that is done, then you can say tests, pretty much you're done with your testing. So let's start with the requirement management, right? So again, this is like the whole SDLC and SDLC combined. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to confuse nobody. We can still follow the SDLC, but again, we have the involvement of QA in BRD and review. And that's why they said when should a QA should join a team as early as possible, because we want to learn the BRD and FRD. BRD is business requirement document. FRD is functional requirement document. Now, if you're an agile, then what is it if you're an agile? Somebody's rescue this. Who wants to answer? Reza Nulbay, can you answer this? So we got the BRD and FRD and maybe requirement document. If you're in agile, what kind of document you'll deal with?
SDLC.
SDLC is the methodology that we use, right? It's
Agile.
SDLC can be used non-agile too, right? SDLC, yeah. I'm talking about document, right? Let's say BRD is for business requirement document. FRD is for functional requirement document. And then you have requirement, right? So let me help you out a little bit, give you some hints. So the requirement study, which is the requirement, right? So the first thing is for process and methodology, you have the testers to be involved in BRD and FRD. That means requirement, right? They need to be able to review the requirements, and so that way they're ready to study it, to understand what the functionality should be. right? So now if you're in Agile, these two documents could be, right, something else, right? Anybody else want to try this?
A user story.
User story, that's it. A user story, right? And I talked about this because, you know, a requirement could be any shape and form. There are many ways to write the same thing, which is what does the user do to the application? And then in return, what does the application give him, right? That is called use case, by the way. So you have a user interaction, user action. To that action, what does the app in your case is doing? What does the app is returning, right? We just checking for those, right? So in the beginning, you need to have the QA involved, because if you are involved into PRD, FRD, as well as the user story, if you're in Agile, then you know exactly how the application will be, what type of application, what are the business process, what are the feature in that application. Therefore, you can identify and help the team to do many things. For example, you can start to write your test plan. You can start to, you know, see suitable items. So we'll, instead of skipping, let me just go over that. So now then you basically identify the platform version and browser targeting. So now if you have, for example, you targeted iOS and Android, and then because this is a hybrid application, you have to target a browser. Is it Safari? Is it going to be Chrome? Right? And if this is specific, very specific for, and this actually will apply to web as well. You can actually also use this approach in web. Now, that's basically signed off of the requirement. This is a linear based methodology that we're talking about. Process and methodology, this is not, I don't think this is Agile. This is more linear, which is the waterfall. So now signed off of the test requirements. So you joined early, you understood the FRD and BRD, you then identify some of the requirements and you signed off only on the requirement, okay? Once the requirement is signed off, the next thing is test strategy, because you already understood the requirement, you already know the application, you already know the features of the application. Now you can provide more valuable information, which is test strategy is the next things to think for you to do. So now you have to look into the tool and evaluate and identify the specific tool. Does your team wants to use test flight? You can recommend. Developers may come out already and say, hey, for iOS, we're going to use test flight, period, you know, and then you can say, okay, that's fine. Then you include that into your test strategy and you provide how to use test flight. You provide some of the information, how to download the app and things like that to your test strategy. What are the approaches of your testing specifically? What kind of test will you do? Will you do feature testing? Will you do functional? Will you then include ad hoc testing? Will you do smoke testing? Will you include regression, and when? When do you do regression? When do you want to do smoke? All of that information will go into this document called test strategy. Identify test infrastructure and requirement. You have to know, is it QA? Is it staging? Is it going to be dev environment that you do the testing? And I think the whole team in your team will probably agree to have QA test into the QA environment only, and then have developer do their testing on dev environment, and likely product and everybody else should do testing on staging environment, right? So 3 different environment for 3 different group of testers. And this is for the best practice, right? Sometimes you'll see that a developer also testing in QA just because he wants to see how it, you know, if it works fine before he even sending that out to you. And that is perfectly fine, but there is best practices that they shouldn't use QA. Once they push the code to QA, it's done. They already tested in development environment and it worked fine for them. And now you do your testing. Once you finish with your testing, and then you push the code to the staging environment, and now the UAT testers will test and provide their input onto the test outcome. Then arrive at the test effort using estimation model. You want to look into the BRD, FRD, and you want to see that the complexity, you want to see how many scenarios that you can potentially come up with. You want to see the complexity of generating test data. You want to see the complexity of the tool itself, how long it will take for each of the QA to utilize the tool, and also what are the prerequisite for each testing types. All of that will be counted toward test estimation. This estimation is to be provided to say, okay, this whole project, again, we're talking about linear base, right? So you can actually provide and say the testing will take 3 months roughly by looking into the BRD and FRD, okay? The next one is define automation framework. Now, define automation framework means is that what do we want into the automation framework? What kind of framework will make sense? And this was already evaluated earlier, right? Now, in this automation framework, we want to think about what to be automated, what not to be automated, and what kind of test do we really want to automate, and also the framework itself. In this case, you want to say, because of these test cases, we want to make sure our framework can do this and that, right? So there are some features to the framework that you want to add. Then you have skill resource identification and loading. So you want to pretty much kind of in your test strategy, you want to mention the skill that is needed for executing automation tests, or at least writing automation tests, creating the framework, and doing manual testing as well. And then you want to talk about who are the resources for what kind. You may want to, if you're writing the test strategy, you may want to divide your group, your team, your testing team, to say, okay, these 2 people are going to be responsible for automation, and then these 3 people are responsible for manual, and these 3 people are going to be responsible for database testing, whatever it is, right? So you're basically identifying and classifying them and making sure that each have a different kind of responsibility within this document, so that way the whole team can reach out to the person appropriately. The next thing is that we're talking about the test estimation model. We're talking about device metrics. We're talking about the test design metrics, test strategy for the device emulator. We've seen the emulator, right? And I'm talking about the test that can be done through BrowserStack, and it has the device simulator and tool evaluation metrics. When I say metrics, you basically putting different pros and cons and different device features to compare against other devices, right? To see why did you come up with the decision to use this specific device, right? So similar to that, anywhere you see metrics, is just basically a document or a spreadsheet that has reasoning and that has enough information to guide yourself toward a specific choice, right? And in order to make that choice, you have a matrix, right? So this is basically just test strategy and test plan. All of these will help you to go into creating a document for test plan. So you got yourself requirement, and this is why you should join the team early. After that, you got the test strategy and test plan. And this is, again, linear based team where you just finished with your test strategy and test plan. The next thing is when developers are ready and started to pushing code and you're doing the testing, you want to start to do your testing, right? This is when you do test design before you do execution. So here you're basically preparing your scenario first. So prepare. And again, like when you do scenario preparation, think about this way, right? The very much why scenario is important. You cannot simply all of a sudden start writing test cases without actually doing brainstorm and come up with all possible combination of scenarios. So in Agile team, and this is a heads up for you guys, if you guys ever join a company, sometimes you'll see that companies skipping scenarios is because they don't want to do extra work. They want to go directly to the test case. It's probably a bad idea because you end up doing the extra work because now you're starting to think about the scenario on the fly, right? And now you miss one or two and then you go back and you have to write the scenario anyways, right? So that's why I like to write the scenarios into a Excel sheet, even if the company doesn't need it, right? Then you write the scenario in Excel sheet, and then you start to prepare your test cases. And from the test cases, you can then choose what needs to be automated. Better yet, I would say, before you even write your test cases, you look at the scenario and already separate the test scenario that should be automated. Okay, and then you just go ahead and create the manual test cases, and then whatever you didn't manually tested or created, you go into and create automation test script. So that will be the one way for you to, or best possible way for you to create the test cases, test scenarios, and then be ready for execution. Now, here, if you're a manual or automation, both applies to you. If you're a manual, you only do this. If you're automation, you basically only do this. But if they require for you to do both, then you do certain percentage of each. So the next one is, again, this is almost like STLC. It's just that we're talking about linear based testing, and we're basically probably missing one or two items. But anyway, let's go into the test execution. Test execution is basically, and always whenever we give perspective, like think about this way, when you learn something and there is a different perspective, take it in, because each team, if I join a company and I think this is the way to go, this is how I will implement, period. Right? Because I'm a lead, I'm a QA manager, whatever I am. I go ahead and implement this because I have to get the team running, right? Nobody's going to come and question and say, "Whoa, wait a minute, best practice and this and that." Because I'm running the show and things are working my way, I will try to run the show that way, right? And then you join my team and you can suggest and we can change. That's why I always think about the perspective. I may be having my team using this flow, another team can follow another kind of flows, right? And so that's why always be open-minded. I know out there in the internet, you learned something. It could be, it could be slightly different, or it could be at least, significantly different, but keep both in your mind, that it is possible to have both, situation. Okay. Test execution is basically performing. You can use the real device or you can use the emulator, right? Emulator is nothing but the, what is the difference between simulator and emulator, right? There is simulator and there is emulator, right? So let's look at the difference between simulator and emulator, right? So this is also interview question. Okay. A simulator is an environment where model, but an emulator is one of the replica usage of the original device or system. Okay, so that means one actually just simulate it, not the real thing. Emulator is an exact replica of the real device, original device. Okay, so now if you ask me, whatever BrotherStack has, it's actually a emulator, right? Because they getting paid, right? And they are, I'm going to go my dashboard real quick. They're getting paid to give you the real thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for a company to pay to use this, use kind of these devices for testing, as you can see, right? And this is like automation, by the way. So you can also automate in BrotherStack. These are the code. It's pretty cool. It's just that I would not use BrotherStack for automation because it does come with a lot of challenges. How do you even install the app, right? That's the first challenge that you can have. You'll have to constantly ask your developer to give you the build, the code, basically the repository, so that way you can install it manually, right? So that's one of the challenge. But anyway, but if you do it locally, you don't need that. You can basically just go ahead and spin up using the same code base, and you will always have the latest code, so you'll be fine. Okay, so now execution is basically we just testing it to find defects, capture logs, screenshots. When you do device testing, guys, and I'm gonna give you guys one piece of advice. This is coming from experience, so take that if you ever do mobile testing. Whenever you test something, take a screenshot and then always create a separate document of each and every single flow of testing and attach it to the story that you tested. And the reason why I found that it was necessary is because mobile sometimes is complex. Sometimes there are complex scenarios. And when you test it and you send it out to the product owner who actually saw the screenshot, basically who saw the design, but never has used the application, they don't know how to even navigate through the application. And now they're going crazy. How come this and how come that? So every time you finish a test and you give it to them and say, okay, do your part, and they come back with 1,000 questions, and then you have to guide them through, you have to show them, and then they's like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Okay, fine. And then they go and then they pass and it go move forward. You can actually minimize all of that by creating the screenshots and then saying, hey, I have the screenshots. If you don't mind, you can just look at the screenshots and pass the story. You know, it's not like you fake the screenshot, right? So at least she or he will be comfortable saying, okay, fine, this person tested it. Here are the screenshots. We're good to go, and move it over instead of coming to you, show me how to do this. I don't know how to do this. And I'm not talking about simply clicking on an app and creating a status. I'm talking about going into an app, finding a very much a specific scenario. It could be a customer who has made a payment, but they are due for termination, but they just made a partial payment. And now, because of that, they should have a specific window where it says, do you want to make the rest of the payment? So that way we don't cut your line or something. And then if they say no, then it goes to a different flow, whatever, right? Or if they say yes, then it goes into a payment plan and blah, blah, blah. It gets complex, right? I'm just kind of coming up with the feature in my mind to give you guys some complexity here, but it could be complex. And then you will spend a lot of time with the product owners where they simply can look at the screenshot and say, okay, done, good. They shouldn't be testing on the first place, right? Product owners shouldn't do the testing because you did the testing. You give them the evidence that, hey, this is how it looks like, and they should accept it. It's called user acceptance testing. The user just accepts and says, okay, I like it. It's good. This is how I wanted it, and done. So what is user acceptance testing? Who wants to answer this? I'm going to ask Syed for this. What is user acceptance testing? And there are a few type of testing that we probably talked about already, but it's good to remind ourselves.
User acceptance testing is when user is like in the last phase of the testing process. And that's where they're testing it as if it's a user, as in like they're going to be using it like a consumer would in those case scenarios.
Exactly. So the real world intended for audience or business representative, right? So let's say you are working on a teller system for Chase, right? All the tellers will use the system, and the head of tellers, meaning in that district or in the whole country, there is somebody who only works with teller system, and he is the representative, right? He will say, I want for all of my tellers this specific feature, and he requested that. Your team developed it. He becomes the UAT tester in that case. Now, bigger companies where they don't want these UAT testers may be like very much high profile people. Like I'm talking about top, and they just don't have the time to do the testing. And that's when you will do the testing. You will set up a meeting with them. You will do the testing. They will see it and they'll be fine. It's like demo, right? You will do the demo. And then they will say, oh, wow, okay, that's awesome. That's great. I love it. I'm going to move the ticket now. I'm going to pass it. That's it, right? Doesn't mean anything. We still get paid for the same hours. It's just that we now spend more, time to do something else, right? Now, in an interview, if they said, have you ever done UAT testing? What is going to be your answer? Your answer is going to be always going to be, yes, I have, because after doing the QA testing in my team, the UAT testers, they require for me to give them a demo separately once it's done. So part of the demo is that I do the testing in front of them to show them the before and after changes, and then based on that, they accept or they don't accept. So I do the UAT testing, right? The thing is that the word I hear is something they want to hear most of the time. If you say, if you're on the call in an interview and you say, we did this and my team, and then I sit down with this person and we always did this way, that way, and we brought the company to this point, you know, we saved this money and that money. It doesn't really, they don't want to hear that. They just feel like, okay, this person is working well in a team, but what about he himself? What are the skill sets that he has that I want to hear? So he's going to just quickly probably shut you down and say, hey, can you tell me what you did? You know, and some interviewers will go directly to the business and they will say, hey, look, anything that you want to mention here, just let's talk about what you have done for your team. And we go from there, right? So just keep that in mind. All right. So pretty much then after the test execution, we have the report. We need to provide the report, right? Because when you don't have the report and you say, hey, everything is good, and you give it to the team and say, hey, testing is done, everything is good, we can go for a release. It really, you know, your word against theirs, right? You said, okay, everything is good and done, and there is no report at all. Tomorrow, somebody can say he hasn't done anything. Somebody can say, you know, Arifa didn't do any testing at all, and we went live, and now we have 10 issues. You know, now she can come out and say, that's not true. I do have the test report. Let's take a look. What is the problem? And not only she can talk about the testing that she did, she can also show the screenshot and say, look, when I tested this, it was fine. When I tested this scenario, it was fine. So clearly there is some difference between the environment. This is an environmental issue, and we need to find out the root cause. And now she could be part of the team to find the root cause instead of, you know, sitting in her desk and thinking, oh my God, I don't know what to say. I just don't know. So that's why I want all of you guys to become more like, you know, data driven, right? You provide the data, even if they don't need it, you provide, you know, if you do the testing, you create a document. It's okay. Just create a document, do that extra work, you know, on your first 2 to 3 jobs, and they will realize quickly how professional you are. If you are a person quickly, you want to jump into the conclusion quickly, you don't have patience, I would recommend start to, you know, change that, because as a QA, patience is the first, you know, tool that you need or skills. You need to be patient. You need to be able to pay attention to detail to find issues. If you're not patient, what's going to happen is that you're going to say, oh, okay, fine, skip. You know, you got to, let's say you order something from Amazon, it came with a manual, right? And you chose not to follow the manual, then you're not patient, and then your personality is still not fit for a QA professional. So if you feel like you're one of those person, you know, nothing to worry about. I used to be in that same boat, right? Just change, you know, and people can change, trust me. Just don't feel like that, you know, you're not going to be able to change yourself and become that kind of professional. You will quickly learn how much you can do by once you start doing. You will really enjoy, because now not only you have evidence that you work, but also your team and everybody will see that evidence, and you'll always feel good about it, and they will feel good about it as well. All right. These are some mobile testing types that we can think about. We got the sanity, we got the functional, we have the interpretation testing, we have regression, stress, performance, localization. There are a few testing types that are here that is different than the web testing. For example, sanity, we do this sanity testing in web as well. It's not just mobile. Functional, we do it in web, right? Regression we do also in web. Stress testing and performance testing we also do in web. What are the difference here? Localization, field testing, and then we got the interruption testing, right? So now localization, let's talk about that first, and then we'll go into the field. Localization is that if you're in Japan, and you're into the same app, what's going to happen? Should you see all, like, let's say you're in a Yelp app, right, in Japan, should you see all of the restaurant recommendation from Japan, or should you see from New York where you originally signed up from, right? So that is something that the device, the language as well, the data that is showing, all of that needs to be specific to where the user is, right? So this testing that you will do, you'll have to change your location, and you can do it. You can change your location and the time itself on your phone through the setting, but also there is an app and you'll have to ask your company to buy you that app to change for testing purposes. Anytime you want to install a new app to your device that is given by your company, you want to make sure that that is authorized and you can use it, right? So I would say first ask the developer and say, hey, I would like to do testing to make sure that this is working on other, places. I need an app that will change location on demand, right? And then you can do that. But also you're going to get requirements that is specifically for localization testing. So that's when you do the testing. The next one is field testing. So field testing is basically, we want to see that validating, had the network in real world and real network environment. So that could be, if you want your app to work, let's say the app was created for athletes who's going to be hiking, and this is for, let's say, SOS or something. Maybe the app is supposed to send SOS message in case they are in trouble, call 911 or whatever. Then you need to do some field testing as well. You want to be in an area where you don't have a lot of bars, and to do a lot of those testing. But I don't think this is gonna be a lot of relevancy, because you can always simulate the condition. So, but this localization also can be simulated through app. So just make sure that you do talk to your manager, or you talk to your development team and see how they were able to. Anytime you need to test any of these and you don't think about it, then ask the developer, hey, when you developed this feature, did you test it? And like, oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I did locally. Okay, fine, that's great. Can you show me? And like, oh, okay. He's showing you, and like, okay, wait a minute, can you tell me how were you able to simulate different location? Oh, this is how I did it. Okay, thanks. That's it. That's all you need, and you can now do the localization testing. Interruption is basically what happens when the operation got interrupted, meaning you click on download something on the app, or you click on give me this and that, right? A report maybe, and all of a sudden you got a call, all of a sudden you got an SMS notification, your battery died, something happened. Let's say you're making a transaction, you're buying a product, your battery is low, and then the message came in. Does it put it on hold? Does it continue to process? What happens, right? So these are some things that you will test based on the specification, based on the design, based on the document that will be provided. So just keep that in mind, because these testing types, you're going to be okay. Sorry, I'll step back for a second. I'm going to take, guys, today I'm going to take maybe another 10 minutes extra, but any time you talk about device and mobile testing, the biggest selling point is that you know a little bit more than just general testing, right? And how do you know a little bit more? Is by knowing the testing types, right? Because a device, these three specific types of testing are different, right? Obviously, there are more testings that are out there that we can think about, but at least if you slightly mention about interruption, if you talk about localization, if you talk about field testing, then it will make you look like somebody who knows a bit more than somebody who just never ever tested in a mobile devices, right? So just keep that in mind. And then we get functional testing. I'm gonna basically explain. Functional testing is anything that has interaction, meaning I did something to the app and it gave me something in return. I click on something, and it just did something for me in respect to that action. I had an action, I clicked on something and it gave me something in return. That is functional, right? Functional and UI testing, look and feel. You want to see text, logo, you want to see the color, you want to see the font size, you want to validate different aspect. You want to see if you can navigate through the whole app, if you can scroll up and down, and all of that is functional and UI testing that you will be doing. Then we got the regression. Regression testing is basically anything you want to test all of the previous features and functionality that you tested before, because what if this new feature broke the system? What if the new changes actually created more issues, right? So think about regression. Regression testing is done to see that if there is, any new bugs originated due to the new changes, new feature introduced, or modifying an existing feature. So that is true for web and that is true for mobile as well. Then we have functional and stress testing, stress and performance testing. Stress is like when you basically have the app use one specific feature more heavily. For example, creating an order, and you just creating an order like crazy using 5 devices, like create, and you put enough stress to that specific app to see the performance. And performance is also pretty much relevant, right? Performance is like when you want to see how well the system is performing under certain stress. So they're relevant basically to each other. In order to see performance, you have to provide stress to the app. In order to see stress testing, you want to put enough, actions, enough. You want to do certain specific item in the application more heavily, like use just one feature like crazy, like pretty much use 10 devices and just everybody using the same feature at the same time to see how well the application behaves. Then we have the sanity testing, guys. Sanity testing is something that I would recommend anytime you finish testing, you want to do a little bit of sanity testing, because sanity testing is to see that stability of the application, and it can be like pretty much meets the standard, right? If that will be fine even for further level of testing, right? If you need any sort of testing, but sanity and ad hoc goes hand to hand. Ad hoc, it means that you go and try to break the system, right? Sanity is also very much, I would say they're like cousins, right? Same. We have another one is called, what's that called? So sanity, and then ad hoc, and also exploratory testing. These three are pretty much similar. You go in there, you don't look into new features or anything. You just try to break the system to do, to see if there's anything you can find. You're just looking for bugs at this point, right? So these are different kind of testing. We already know some of them, but in mobile, we do have certain testings that are different in mobile devices, right? So just keep that in mind. Anytime you want to talk in the interview, you want to emphasize the type of testings more on the mobile side in order to appear that you are the mobile expert that they were looking for. Okay. Let's see if we can even go into, that is a significantly lot of information. So what I'm going to do is that I don't want to hold you guys up. It's 12:05. We're going to take it from here, 23. Just keep in mind we're in 23. And obviously the next class will finish the entire mobile testing. Now your question might be, there might be some questions. You may want to say, oh, how come we haven't done mobile testing? And we're just going through slides. The level of testing, the learning here is that, the difference between web and mobile, so you can actually perform mobile and web both. And us testing, if you have an iPhone, you can do mobile testing right now. You can also sign up for beta tester for many app that is out there that they want user like you to say, okay, come give us some, feedback, early feedback, and you can do those testing. The only difference is that for those, you don't have to write documentation. But if if your team specifically creating an app and they have mock-up like this ones, you want to create documentation, you want to provide what you will be testing. But now let's look back. This was done in waterfall, right? Now, if you did everything in Agile, then the only thing here that I would change for Agile is that these things will be done instead of like test strategy will be done once, and requirement management will be just done once, right? These two documents, test plan and test strategy, will be done in the very beginning just once, because you don't want to create for every sprint. That'll be too much for you, right? So you do it once just to make sure that you know what to do, what are the items that you want to take care of during the whole sprint, and going through each and every single user stories. When you get the user stories, then you go write the scenarios, write test cases, and automate if that applies. Everything else stays the same. Okay. The difference is that two difference actually. One is the test plan and test strategy. You create that one for all of the sprint, and you can update as needed. And then the other difference is that this is linear based. You're going in a very nice, direction, and one after another. That's about it. But in Agile, we're gonna go the same direction for 2 weeks only. Okay, the sprint only for a single sprint, the whole thing. And then the next sprint, we're gonna follow the same exact step. I hope you guys remember Agile, right? It's a small duration of time, and we try to do everything in that duration, but we don't do the whole application. We do a small part of the application. So just keep that in mind. We are at 23. We're gonna follow from 24. The next class. If you guys have any question, I'm gonna go ahead and first stop the recording. If you guys have any question, I'll give you guys another 4 or 5 minutes, and then